Right, hi guys, and welcome back to the Road Yorkshireman, and a happy new year to you all. Hope you all had a great festive period. Hope you had a great time over Christmas and New Year with your friends, your family. Hope you had lots of good food, lots of good drink, and yeah, back to reality now, isn't it? Back to reality indeed, and that means that I'm back making videos again. Can you believe it, eh? 2025, you thought it might be the year you got rid of me. Oh no, I'm back with a vengeance. So this video is going to be the driver rankings overall from the end of the season. So I did one mid-season and I thought I normally do 5 good, 5 bad, but the grid has been so poor and inconsistent over 2024. I thought we best do a full driver ranking and rank the drivers where I actually think they deserve to finish on this list. So we're going to go from 24th to 1st. In this video we're going to do 24th to 11th. We had 24 drivers throughout the season, so we're going to rank them accordingly in this video, 24th to 11th. Friday's video will be 10th to 1st. There we go. Good stuff that, isn't it? Good stuff. I'm getting back into the routine of it now. So, well, without further ado, we'll kick things off on this list, shall we? With Jack Doohan. Didn't get a fair crack at the whip, did he, to be fair? Only competed in Abu Dhabi, the final round of the season, when Alpine had actually had enough of Esti Bestie Ocon. Can't blame him, to be honest. But yeah, Jack Doohan is last on this list because we didn't really get to see what he was truly going to be capable of. However, it was also difficult to judge him because was he miles off the pace of Gasly, or is that Alpine car miles off the pace because he didn't have the upgrades? We saw how well Gasly was doing against Ocon in the last few rounds of the season, where Ocon was getting, pretty much Q1 eliminations and failing to score points, while Gasly had the fantastic efforts of top 5 finishes. Obviously Brazil as an exception, but he was getting top 5 finishes and was single-handedly involved in getting Alpine that 6th in the Constructors at the end. So yeah, it's a difficult one to judge. Was the Alpine car, that second car, was it really that much slower than Gasly? It looked slow in the hands of Ocon, but whether they were just trying to shaft Ocon just because they wanted rid of him, it's difficult to judge, isn't it? But Jack Doohan had a solid yet unimpressive debut to his career in Abu Dhabi. Didn't do anything spectacular, lined up on the back row of the grid and just kept himself out of trouble. That's all you can really say. So yeah, not a fair comparison, but Jack Doohan has to be somewhere, and he has to be 24th, unfortunately, on this list. In 23rd place, we come to Logan Sargeant in the Williams, of course, binned off after his tragic shunt in Zandvoort. Just too much damage to really comprehend what he was playing at, what he was doing. Well out of his depths in Formula 1. He was given this second season when everyone on the sidelines was saying, oh, that's a bit of a brave move. And it was, unfortunately, a step too far. I think he should have gone at the end of last season. But yeah, he didn't. End of 2023 came. He was re-signed for 2024. He lasted till Zandvoort. Caused some heavy damage, caused some heavy contact. I mean, Williams this season have literally just been racking the bills up with damage, haven't they? Even with the replacement driver who we'll come to shortly. But yeah, you know, Logan Sargeant, out with his depths in Formula 1, never got adapted to the car, never really overly impressive. Yet we didn't have the second half of the season to prove what he could have done, but he was out of his depth, and he has to be here in 23rd place because there was really no one else worse than him this season. In 22nd place, we come to Lance Stroll. Hallelujah, Lance Stroll. Didn't score any points for like the last 11 or 12 races of the season last year, did he? He was absolutely dog shite, I'm sorry to say, but that was probably one of his worst seasons in Formula 1 ever. And that says something for Lance Stroll, doesn't it? I think 2020 was probably about his best, wasn't it? But even then he was still not in the realms of his teammate Perez at the time, who was getting wins and podiums regularly. So yeah, Lance Stroll, well out of his depth. He's got this job security within Formula 1. He's got the seat security. When there's only 20 cars on the grid and you've got this fucking idiot playing about, just having a fucking dick about. I mean, Brazil was bad enough, wasn't it? But then we have the likes of China at the start of the season where he crashed behind the safety car and ploughed into the back of Ricciardo. It's just not acceptable at all. Well out of his depth. Didn't belong in Formula 1 5 seasons ago. You know, maybe even 6 seasons ago. He shouldn't have joined Racing Point, but his daddy obviously bought the team for him. His venture in Formula 1 should have ended when he left Williams, really, but instead his daddy bought him a racing team, and this is the end result. We're now branded as Aston Martin, trying to take herself seriously, and you've got that absolute idiot. So yeah, Lance Stroll, only marginally better than Logan Sargeant because he managed to finish the season, but then again, he was never going to not finish the season, was he? Regardless of the results or crashes or anything he did. So yeah, Lance Stroll, 22nd on this list. Absolutely pathetic. 21st on this list, we come to Checo. Sergio Perez fails to make it inside the top 20 with 20 full-time drivers. That really does show you how bad this season has been for Sergio Perez. Dropped now by Red Bull. They've agreed mutually to part ways, which I think was, there's the door, Checo. Get the fuck out of it, mate. Yeah, it's been a disaster, hasn't it? Absolute disaster. The only thing we really saw of him that was tangible was Azerbaijan, of course, the Baku race, where he was hands down better than Verstappen all weekend, but then on the last lap had that shunt with Carlos Sainz and still netted him no points while he was fighting for a podium. Had he secured that podium, would his fortunes have changed? Maybe he'd have found a little bit more confidence in the car had he got the end result. But the pace all race, that one was just a very much an exception because he's only picked something daft up like 30 odd points in the last 16 races or something daft. It's not impressive at all. I think he's been beaten by Gasly in the last like half of the season. I think he's been beaten by probably even Hulkenberg as well, to be honest. So yeah, it's been a dismal season for Checo Perez. First couple of races were relatively strong, but then he fell off a cliff, and my God, he just kept falling, didn't he? Didn't find any pace, Q1 eliminations regularly, and then if he was into Q2, he didn't get through into Q3, and then if he did get into Q3, it was lining up at the back of the grid anyway of that Q3 appearance, and then was doing nothing. Cost Red Bull the Constructors' title this year, hands down, single-handedly, and was just very, very poor. So yeah, Sergio Perez, 21st, after 20 full-time drivers. That is very, very poor indeed. In 20th place, we come to Daniel Ricciardo, the honey badger himself. A venture that should have never have returned to Formula 1. He shouldn't have come back in 2023. As much as Nick de Vries was struggling, it was a tough AlphaTauri car that season, and I honestly believe that Nick de Vries should have seen the season out because the car got gradually better and they put Ricciardo back in that car when it got better in 2023. I don't know what they were playing at in terms of signing him again for 2024. We didn't really see anything apart from Mexico of him in the 2023 campaign where he was actually decent. He was well out of his depth. He's lost his mojo. And that's fine. You know, just admit it, though, and go out gracefully. But he was denied that opportunity by the RB squad, obviously due to him knowing he was going after Singapore, but wasn't allowed to tell anyone he was going after Singapore. And that was a little bit sad, because as much as Ricciardo was past it, he was past his best, past his prime, he did deserve a proper send-off from Formula 1 for what he did in his earlier career, you know, beating Sebastian Vettel and being a match for Verstappen in his early seasons as well at Red Bull. Let's not forget that. So yeah, did deserve a proper send-off, didn't get one. However, the first half of his campaign in 2024 was fairly dismal, beaten by Yuki Tsunoda, hands down, without issue, really. Ridiculous strategies that sometimes Tsunoda was put on just to try and make Ricciardo look a bit better than he was. I weren't buying any of that shit. And clearly the team were in the end as well, because they ditched him in favour of Liam Lawson. But yes, Daniel Ricciardo, 20th on this list. In 19th place, we come to Zhou Guanyu in the first of the State Kick Me Up the Arse Saubers. 19th place for Zhou Guanyu. He was very, very dismal, wasn't it, throughout all of the season, to be honest with you. But then we got to Vegas and something happened. Some sort of fire in his belly was ignited. Probably the flames on the side of the car for that special Vegas livery. It was probably that. But we just saw a different Zhou, and we saw a Zhou that was like competing for points in a car that really didn't deserve to be. It didn't come good in Vegas for him, but then in the main race itself at Qatar, he secured 8th place, 4 points, the only points that the State Kick Me Up the Arse squad scored all season. And he actually had an impressive end to his season. The last 3 races were mightily impressive. I was even slightly impressed with him at Brazil for not crashing with all the weather conditions and everyone else was crashing. Didn't crash, I was impressed at that. And then he built on that. Vegas was very, very solid. Qatar was absolutely exceptional. And then Abu Dhabi was short and sweet, really, for him. He didn't do what Bottas did, which was ploughing into the whole world. But, you know, it was a difficult circuit to end his career on in a car that was shit. It was always going to be at the back of the grid. But yeah, Zhou Guanyu, 19th place is basically because of the last 3 races this season, to be honest with you. Without that, he would have been, well, he'd have been probably 22nd or 23rd on this list, to be honest with you. He had a lot of crashes. There was only really China where he got that 9th place in the sprint race, didn't he? Just missing out on a point there where you could say that he'd had some sort of good form up until this point. So yeah, Zhou Guanyu, a 19th place, but it's respectable in the end. And he ended his season and career potentially quite respectably, I must say, but the rest of the season was absolutely abysmal, so he has to be 19th on this list. In 18th place, we come to the second of the Stake Keep Me Up There Sours, in Valtteri Bottas, of course. Valtteri Bottas here in 18th place. I don't understand where some of the driver rankings I've been watching have got him as high as like 11th or 12th. Where the fuck's he been this season? He finishes 18th, just ahead of Zhou Guanyu, simply for the fact that Bottas didn't cause as much damage as Zhou did. There was times where Zhou was over a second off the pace compared to Bottas in a car that's shit, that's fair enough, but, you know, a second gap between your teammate, that's not acceptable. So Bottas finishes 1 place ahead of Zhou, simply for the fact that Bottas was a little bit better in the early phases of the season and the mid-stage of the season where Zhou was a lost soul. But then come the end of this season, I mean, you could sum it up with Abu Dhabi, couldn't you? That was his career in a nutshell. Abu Dhabi, you know, hit Sergio Perez, spun him round, hit Kevin Magnussen, took himself out of the race and seriously affected Kevin Magnussen's race. It was absolutely shocking. So yeah, Valtteri Bottas, 18th on this list. He's lucky he's not lower, to be honest. Such is the low quality of the standards this year. But yeah, just finishes 1 place above Zhou Guanyu, simply for the fact that he didn't cause as much damage over the season. And we did have some good races where points were maybe possible, but we had the slow pit stop scenarios in the early phases of the season. So yeah, there was probably points possible maybe at China, then his engine expired. Maybe Australia, but then he had a slow stop. So yeah, there's a couple of things there, but I'm not singing Bottas's praises at all. He's 18th, he was shite, and thank God he's off the grid for 2025. 17th place, we come to Kevin Magnussen in the first of the Haas cars. Kevin. He had a great end to the season. It must be said he was unlucky in certain situations, such as the US Grand Prix, where points were possible, but Haas for some reason decided to put him on a 2-stop. Of course, unlucky at Abu Dhabi, had a great start to the race, got himself inside the top 10, had a slow pit stop, then got taken out by Bottas. So 17th place, you know, you think maybe harsh, but yeah, harsh based on the last half of the season. I'm going across the board here. I'm going for the full season. And he did pick up a race ban with wheel-to-wheel combat stupidity over the course of the season. Did he deserve to get the ban for just slightly nudging Pierre Gasly off the road at Italy in Monza? No, he didn't deserve those extra 2 points which got him the ban. I didn't agree with that. But if he were going to get banned, he should have got banned after Monaco, where he absolutely wiped his own teammate out, absolutely tried to murder Sergio Perez. It was stupid, it was ridiculous, and he didn't learn his lesson. And that's the key thing there for me. I think he never learnt his lesson on that. He did have some good fire in his bellies, though, some great results. 7th place in Mexico was his highlight this season, I would say. That was a really impressive drive. Hands down, the best Haas car that weekend. But yeah, just too much inconsistency, too much over-the-limit driving, racing, defending, and miles off the pace more often than not than his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. And if something happened to Hülkenberg, it was very rare that Kevin Magnussen was there to pick up the pieces and score points for Haas. So yeah, Kevin Magnussen, 17th on this list. I did like him as a person. I think he was a great character within Formula 1, but his time has very much come now. That's the end of his Formula 1 career, and 17th place is the highest I can place him. In 16th place, we come to Franco Colapinto in the Williams, the second of the Williams. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Yeah, here he is, 16th place. He could not be any higher, unfortunately. Came into Formula 1 and was like, everyone was like, why the hell have they signed this guy? There's plenty of other options out there that are more qualified than him. But he came into the sport and did a great job for the first couple of races. A respectable P12 finish at Monza. Then he got points in Baku, then he got another point in the USA, and things were looking up, but then we just turned into an absolute shunt monster, didn't we? 2 big crashes in Brazil, which I can forgive that because everyone was crashing that weekend. Sainz had 2 crashes, Alonso had a crash and several offs. You know, some big names had issues that weekend, and Colapinto crashing twice, yeah, it wasn't ideal, but we can let it slide. But I think Colapinto lost his confidence within that car then, and unfortunately meant that he didn't really drive as well as he could have done in the remaining few races. Vegas, the big shunt there, was the big talking point. He's just had 2 big shunts already. Then we come to Vegas and we have another one, and it's just difficult, isn't it? It really is. And then the rest of his season was sort of curtailed, wasn't it? He was involved in the incident at the start of the race at Qatar, which was Hülkenberg spinning, so that was unfortunate. And then also at Abu Dhabi, where he got his rear tyre clipped by Piastri's front wing. So it was difficult to judge the end of his season, but the way he came into the sport was all guns blazing, no pressure on him, did a really good job. But I think the pressure then got to him when he started crashing at Brazil, and he just never quite let that go. The media was on him, the press was on him. It was going to be the next best thing since Senna, and I think the pressure got to him. But he's still a young lad. I still think he deserves a seat in Formula 1, but probably best he takes 2025 out. 16th is the highest I can place him, though, simply for the fact of the amount of damage caused. 15th place, we come to Liam Lawson in the second of the Visa Cash App Max Tampon RB Buy One, Get One Frees. Yeah, Liam Lawson this season should have really had the crack of the whip throughout the entirety of the season. He should have been evaluated over the whole season, but instead he was dropped in after Singapore, put in some impressive performances, picked up a few points, yeah, getting that Red Bull seat for 2025, not convinced by that at all. Beaten every single qualifying session by Yuki Tsunoda throughout the remainder of the season. Even if it was only fractional or marginal, you're still beaten out, and you're still beaten by a teammate. The racing itself was okay. Didn't really do much wrong. Qatar was a difficult one, wasn't it? Where he had that spin and then picked up a time penalty because he inconvenienced Bottas's race. And Qatar, if I remember rightly, was difficult for him last year as well. He went off on lap 1 and stuck in the gravel, didn't he? So yeah, very, very unfortunate, it must be said, for Liam Lawson in that scenario. He was good, but yeah, I think he has got potential. Don't get me wrong, I think he has got potential as Liam Lawson, and it's not fair that we didn't get the whole season to judge him, because I think we should have done. Ricciardo should have never been in that seat. If we'd have had the whole season to judge him against Tsunoda, then we've certainly got a lot more scope to go on, a lot more basis. But we've only got a few races from last season, we've only got a few races from this season, and yeah, in the end he was sort of beaten by Tsunoda. So you can't really do much more than that, can you? So 15th on this list for Liam Lawson, and that's that. In 14th place, we come to Ollie Behrman. The three of the debutants deputising for their respective drivers are all together clumped on this list. Ollie Behrman, I don't think it's fair I can put him any higher than this. Yes, he came in Saudi Arabia. It was absolutely phenomenal what he did with that car. Yes, it was a Ferrari, but with little to no experience. Just qualified in F2 and then was like, yeah, we need you, mate. We need you. If Carlos Sainz's appendix has got to be removed, can we have you, please? And he did an incredible job to secure P7 there. Rounded off by another point that he got, of course, in Azerbaijan, Baku. He was looking like he was just going to be finishing P11, didn't he? But then Hülkenberg had a miscommunication with the safety car, virtual safety car ending, and Behrman slipped through, which was unfortunate in that scenario. But nonetheless, he picks up a point there, so that was good. First driver ever to score points for two different teams in the same season. Then we get to Brazil, the Brazil sprint race. If I remember rightly, they were struggling with tyre wear, so faded away. And then in the main race itself in Brazil was very, very scruffy, wasn't it? Several offs, several spins. Looked to be like, oh, we've got a bit of luck here now. There's been a safety car. We can catch up back to the pack again, don't worry about that spin. And then after the safety car ended, it'd go and spin off again. So it was difficult to judge Behrman that weekend, however, struggling in the wet conditions is understandable. Like Colapinto did it, you know, it's just how it is. So yeah, 14th for Ollie Behrman. I think had he been a full-time driver this season and was putting in performances like that, he would certainly be a lot higher up this list. But you know, just a few selected races. One with Haas that was like upgrades, no upgrades. One race for Ferrari. Difficult to give him a whole picture, but I do think that Haas have got a good driver there in signing him for 2025. I think he'll be a great asset. But yeah, 14th place, sort of the highest I can place him. 13th place, we come to Esti Bestie Ocon. Esti Bestie to you. Ain't like Esti Bestie Ocon. Here he is, finishing in P13, unlucky for some, and I thought there was only one place Ocon could finish on this list, and it was 13th. Had a great start to the season, looked to have the measure of his teammate, despite the car being absolutely ridiculously crap. It was out in Q1 every time, but if there was one driver that was sort of trying to break into Q2 in the Alpines, it was Ocon. You know, he was fighting to get up there, while Gasly was like rounding up 19th, 20th, pretty much every time, fighting with the likes of Zhou and Sargent. Ocon was trying to break through, but then we had that incident in Monaco, didn't we, where the two Alpines touched, which caused damage, and that was a difficult one. It was a difficult one in that moment because I think Ocon had lost his relationship with the team quite significantly there. All of their eggs firmly went into the basket of Pierre Gasly, and it was just a difficult situation for him to get out of. We're not sure what happened in the last few races. There were upgrades on Gasly's car that were obviously working and were better, but how much better were they? Because we saw Gasly in continuous Q3 appearances, great front row, you know, great P3 qualifying in Vegas. he was just doing really well, and Ocon was getting eliminated in the likes of Q1 or just scraping into Q2, then being eliminated. So how much of that was upgrades? How much of that was them just really just focusing on Gasly and just forgetting about Ocon, just do whatever? I'm not sure. Were they just running as a one-car team towards the end? It's difficult to judge, but also difficult then to judge Doohan's performance because he was in Ocon's car. It's an odd one. It's a really odd situation. And with Flavio Briatore at the helm at that team, I wouldn't put it past them that they have deliberately hindered Ocon's performance to make Gasly look better. It wouldn't put me past it at all. So, yeah, difficult one to judge for Ocon, but yeah, lost a lot of respect after that Monaco accident, not just within the team, but within the Formula One community as a whole. Great to see him on the podium, though, of course, picking up the P2 finish he did in Brazil. Fantastic effort. And then from there, his season went really, really wrong, really rapidly, and Gasly beat him hands down. So, yeah, unlucky for some P13 for Ocon. A difficult year overall. And in 12th place, we come to Alexander Albon in the last of the Williams that we will be discussing on this list. 3 out of 3. Alex's season has been very much up and down. It's not been the stellar 2023 performance we saw of him where he single-handedly got P7 in the Constructors for that Williams squad. But yeah, Alex has had some good performances. Canada was looking to be a great race weekend overall, and then he got took out by Carlos Sainz that was spinning. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It's just been a difficult season to judge for Alex because sometimes when the car's been good, he's had bad luck or he's just not got the most out of it. And then when the car's been bad, he's tried to put good performances in, but they've gone unnoticed. But yeah, overall, I would say that Alex is sort of question marks. I would say, I'm not going to say that fully, but question marks started to arise with Alex when Colapinto came in alongside him and was matching and or beating Alex in qualifying, in race pace, in race performances. And that's where the question marks really started to come in for Alex. It was like, okay, this new kid's come in. Difficult one to judge, isn't it? So yeah, Alex Albon, not his finest moment this season, it must be said. We did see some good performances from him throughout the season, but just too inconsistent. With Carlos Sainz alongside him for 2025, maybe that's what he needs. Maybe he needs a driver of Carlos Sainz's calibre to be able to push him along. Someone that he knows he's going to have a fair fight with, he's going to have a clean fight with, and he knows he's going to have a challenge to be able to beat him. So maybe that's what Alex needs. Maybe that's what he needs. Maybe he needs the challenge. Logan Sargent wasn't a challenge for Alex at all. Maybe he got complacent in that car in the early half of the 2024 campaign because he just knew he was going to beat Sargent all the time. Then when Colapinto came in, it's like, oh shit, I've got to raise my game. And then by raising his game, we saw the accidents, we saw the incidents, we saw the inconsistency come through. And now he's potentially got Carlos Sainz alongside him for a number of years alongside him in Williams. Maybe that's the consistency Alex needs. A driver of high calibre that he can compare himself to so they can push each other forwards. I'm looking forward to 2025 for Williams with that lineup, it must be said. But yeah, Alex Albon this season can only really be placed 12th. And then last on this list, in 11th place, we come to... it's going to be controversial for everyone involved, I'm sure. The comments are going to be going wild. It is Lewis Hamilton. It has to be. I'm sorry. Lewis Hamilton 11th on this list because it was not a great season for him, was it? He has single-handedly been beaten by George Russell in qualifying over single laps by nearly 0.2 of a second on average across the season. He's been out-raced by George. He's been out-paced by George. And the qualifying is what has really undone Lewis Hamilton's season. You know, we saw that fantastic win in Great Britain for him. We really did. I was so chuffed to see that. I genuinely was. I thought, God, if you're going to get another win, buddy, after a couple of years, your home Grand Prix is where you do it. And he did it, and he smashed it, and I was so happy for him. And then everyone was expecting him to be really high up there. Like, the calibre was high now. We got to Spa. Stunning performance. We're looking like he was going to win the race, but then didn't actually win the race on the road because he couldn't get around his own teammate on much older tyres, and that was a little bit of a question mark for me. Obviously inherited the win due to George's disqualification afterwards for the car being underweight. But yeah, not being able to match George Russell in qualifying has been the big problems, and not being able to not just match his teammate where he's just finishing a couple of places behind. He's making mistakes in qualifying, getting lap times eliminated for track limits, getting knocked out early in Q1, in Q2, lining up 10th on the grid instead of inside the top 5 where he should be. And that has really hampered his last few races of the season, where he's been able to finish in a great position, but had he been higher up the grid, could have bloody won the thing. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton, Very, very inconsistent this season, and he's 11th on the list for that reason. I didn't think I'd be placing him so low, especially with the other cars and drivers that I've got coming inside the top 10, which are going to be controversial as well, because you'll know there's some drivers missing, like, no, I'd have placed him 15th because of XYZ. But no, they're going to be there soon. So yeah, look forward to seeing that video on Friday, where I go from 10th to 1st, and see if you agree with my list so far. Do you agree with 24th to 11th? How would you shuffle these around, particularly? Would you put Hamilton well inside the top 10? Do you think he doesn't deserve to be here? And if he does deserve to be in the top 10, who have I not talked about yet that you think should be in 11th? Interesting one, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you all on Friday, 6 o'clock, for the next instalment of this series. And as always, much love.